Hi and welcome to this new episode of our blog application tutorial. It's been a while since we recorded the last episode. I think it was end of October last year, so I apologize for this long pause. Well, we've been quite busy growing our company and developing Structr further. Now we have released, or a couple of weeks ago, we released the version 3.1. 3.1.2 is the latest current release, and made quite some progress. And by the way, if you're replaying this tutorial with one of these new versions or current versions, please make sure that you have enabled the schema auto migration. There's a short comment in the description below this video on how that works. Just a little background. Schema auto migration is used when we develop something or we have some changes in the Java code of Structr's built-in functionality, and we have to update the data model in the database, the dynamic data model, which is stored in the graph database. And we have to enable this switch to allow Structr to do that. Okay, that said, let's just jump right into the tutorial. Now, as always, we import the definition of the application from an URL just by using this link. You find this link in the video description, as always. Please, as always, again, make sure that there's no white space in the URL. We typically put a white space in this string, into this string, to make sure that the YouTube link shortener will not make this URL unusable. Okay, after a couple of seconds, the page reloads, and we should see our two pages here we created during the older tutorials or episodes. There's a overview page called blog home and a details page called blog post. Okay, now in this tutorial I want to show two things. One is how to modify the query of the overview page in order to display the full list of blog posts, even if there's no parameter for the full text search given. And the second one is how to link blog posts to categories in order to add a filter by category functionality to this little application. Okay, so now let's start with the query. Now let's find the element which serves as a repeater. That's this one here. And first let's see how the page behaves right now. If we go onto this, we open this page without any request parameter, we get no blog posts at all. If we enter a search term here, like for example happy, then we get the blog post which has the word happy in its text, and we can remove it again and we see nothing. That's what we want to change. In order to do that, we have to modify the query, which is under the query and data binding tab here, found here, and it's the function query. Okay, now this query right now is very simple. It searches for a blog post with the value of the request parameter q in its text attribute. And if there is no request parameter q given, we want to show just a list or display just a list of blog posts. So we need an if expression here. So if empty request.q, if the request parameter q is empty, use find blog post, and in the other case, if the request parameter q is given, then use the query that we had before. Close this this expression here, not forget this, and we save it. And now let's reload the page, and we see without any value for this request parameter q, we have the full list of 3 blog posts from the database, and our search still should work. Okay, that was the first thing I wanted to show. The next thing is a little bit more complicated or more advanced. For these categories right now are displayed just by static elements in the page. We have two unordered list elements in these two column elements here. We just remove the second column, now it's gone, and make it a little bit more wide here. The column now spreads over the full width of this element here, and we remove anything but the first element, and we will create a database query later on to turn this list element into a repeater. But first we have to change our schema. I open the schema in a new tab, and there is the blog post type or class we created before, and now we want to store categories. So I create a new type called blog category, and I will now link or create a relation between blog post and blog category by just drag and drop this green arrow. Now we just have to assign a relationship type, which is named has category, and as one blog post can have multiple blog categories and vice versa, one blog category can be assigned to multiple blog posts. We just leave it here as a this is an M2M relationship. Okay, save it, and then the schema gets reloaded, and now we can access the data or enter data of the type blog category. I've already prepared some categories here and also assigned them to the blog posts. So we can see here a new attribute called has category blog categories. A little bit awkward, this name. We can change this name in the schema if we are sure that we have no naming conflicts. So this auto name generation is just there to avoid naming conflicts. But if we can be sure that these are the only categories this blog post class is connected with, we can just change that to something which makes more sense to you. For example, categories on this side, and on the other side of this relation we change it just to blog posts. Okay, now when we reload the data section, we see this attribute now reads categories, and on the other side it reads blog posts. Okay, by the way, you will see IDs here because the blog posts don't have a name. We just use the text in the title attribute. Of course, you could enter a name, and then you would see the name in this data section as well. Okay, now let's go back to the pages section and go back to this static element which is responsible for rendering these list elements or list items, and now we change it to a repeater. We always use function queries in this blog post tutorial, blog application tutorial, because they are the most I think the most simple queries, and you find more information about the built-in functions on our documentation website on structr.com. Okay, here we just want to display a list of blog categories, so we use the well-known find expression and just use the blog category type here, and we assign the results of this query to the data key or reference key cat. Okay, now we have three elements because there are three categories in the database already. We only have to change the display name here to display the name of the category, of course, like that. Okay. Now we have three categories here, and of course we want to send the information about which category a user has clicked on to the server. In order to do that, we have to modify the a element, the href attribute of the a element, into cat equals, sorry, cat.id. So cat in this case is just a random string. It's the name of the request parameter we use to transmit the information about the ID to the server. And cat.id here is the ID of the category from the list. Okay, now let's try it out, how that works. Now I click on HTML and you see the URL reads just cat equals ID of this HTML category. But there are still 3 blog posts in this list, so there's no filter in this URL. We have to define this filter or add or modify this query to reflect these changes. Okay, now we go back to this query string, and what we want to change is this find blog post expression, because in the case of an empty request parameter q, which was used for the full text search, we want to use this category to look for blog posts which match. So we change that into the search query or expression, and we search in the categories attribute, and now we need a collection of categories to filter the blog posts. Now, categories is a collection attribute, as you saw in the schema. Categories has a multiplicity of n or m, so the block categories or the categories is a collection attribute. Now, let's first find a block category by this ID. This is done by, again, find block category, and then just the ID. The ID is sent to the server with the request parameter cat. Now this is the inner part of the query, but this is just a single element returned from this query, and we just have to turn that into a collection so that the type fits. And this is just done by surrounding a merge function, and that should do it. Let's see. I click on the HTML and I get one blog post. Let's look it up. So yes, happy birthday. The happy birthday blog post has the category HTML assigned. Now, if we click on the CSS category, we should get the new Structr release and a new blog post. Let's try it out. Okay, that works. Okay, as you can see, of course the query gets a little bit more complicated, but I think you can still handle that with just one query. If it's gonna be more complicated over time, if you add more filters, there are other possibilities to create queries. For example, you can use a flow query, and the new flow editor, which is also new in the 3.1 release. This is something we will show in some later tutorials. Okay, that was it. That was our 5th tutorial out of this series. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As always, if you liked it, please subscribe to our channel and leave us a thumbs up here. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.